Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Strategic Trade Group, and this is your end-of-day market recap for Wednesday, November 20th. A risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Everything I'm going over is for information purposes only. So let me start with my market message. I probably haven't done this in a while, just to kind of let you know what I'm up to in terms of trading. Basically what I try to do in my approach to the market is number one, I'm a trend trader. I try to stick with trends. I believe that, names that have had good earnings, those are the names that I want to be in. I don't, so, for example, a name gaps up into earnings. I will put it on a list. I call that my strong earnings list. And gap list. And basically, what I'm looking for a lot of times is for, if there's overall market weakness, those names pulling back a little bit after a gap and then, coming into, let's say, a 20-day moving average, or I use value areas a lot, top of the value area, and then breaking back above, right? And resuming that trend. That's the most, that's a lot of how I trade. I also look for names that have been in a base for a long time and then begin to break out. But I don't try to outsmart the market. I think a lot of folks try to do that. They go after names and downtrends, trying to find the perfect setup. And I don't really mess with that stuff. I've learned over time that I that's a really hard game to play. It's not to say that you can't get a name to bounce in a downtrend, but that's usually just what it is. It's a bounce and a downtrend, and then the trend usually resumes until it kind of goes through, like, stages, right? And Stan Weinstein is great for those stages. He talks about stage one, stage two, stage three, stage four. So, seeing a name like that's been in a downtrend for a while, base, right? Because normally there's just not a lot of V recoveries. Normally, what happens after a prolonged downtrend, a name bases for a long time, goes sideways, and then begins to recover. That's typically how it's done for some companies. Some companies, stay in downtrends and they go lower. And, we've seen those, things happen over and over. If you don't believe me, take a look at pot stocks that were once hot. Anyway, I don't try to outsmart the market. I try to just pick up on what the market is telling me, right? And try to read of, hey, this is what the market is doing. Let me get along for the ride, right? And look for trends and look for areas of strength, and also look for rotations, and understand that things are going to get a bit overbought, right? Which kind of brings us to a little bit of the market today. Now, first of all, first of all, geopolitical concerns, right? And they've been weighing on the market. They've been causing, I think the VIX got up to almost 19 today, right? Rockets going off, like, from Ukraine into Russia and vice versa, and all of that. And, the possibility of, which we hope we don't see, escalation of nuclear weapons. That's what we really don't want to see. But the market is a little bit uneasy around that. And the VIX closed today right around 17, right? Still above 17. So still a little bit of heightened sense of volatility from where we were, right? And that's probably because these things don't get uh they don't take care of themselves in like 1 or 2 days. Sometimes they do, but sometimes it takes a little bit longer. So ultimately, there's buying opportunities when there's a lot of geopolitical concerns. That's something that you learn over time, right? If you're playing for the world to end, that's not really a great trade. So you kind of have to be a little bit optimistic, and overall, you have to be a little bit optimistic in trading. If you're not, you're just, you're going to find that, that you're going to be fighting against the grain a lot of times, right? So let's talk about and by the way, Nvidia reported earnings after the close. Not much of a reaction. I've got questions on Twitter, like, this, for some reason, this always happens with the big companies. And it happens with, like, a lot of the like anonymous Twitter accounts. These are folks that are mostly like newer traders, I guess. They're not secure enough to create like a name around, like a real name. So they create these anonymous accounts because they're insecure and they don't want to they don't want to let anybody know who they are, I guess. But anyway, I always get the same kind of questions from some of the anonymous accounts. It's like, oh, I don't understand why is it down and they beat earnings? Because it's all about expectations. And like, so this is like number one lesson. And sometimes I tailor these end of day videos from the types of questions that I get or whatever the topic is. But you should know this already if you've been watching some of these earnings results. It's not so much about the actual numbers. It depends on the hype, right? So for example, like look at Snowflake, right? Snowflake is up huge, but and it just barely beat expectations, right? Because the expectations are a bit lower for this company, right? This is a company that has had some issues when you look at the last earnings results. For example, Snowflake, right? So look at what Snowflake has done on earnings the last three times. It's gone down the last like 6 out of 7 quarters, right? So all they have to do is jump over the bar, a little bit better than what the expectations are, and they could do something like this. So again, it's a lot about those expectations. For Nvidia, everybody knows that they're going to have strong earnings. So that they have to say something much better than just beating earnings. And again, so I'll say this one more time, and then I'm going to move on to another subject. But it's not just about whether or not they beat the top line and the bottom line in earnings, right? It has to be what the hype is. Like if so for example, right? And I don't think that they had a bad quarter last time, but if you remember last time for Nvidia, there was people that were going to they were going out to bars for earnings party video, right? That tells you that how, and look at what happens, right? The hype was just too much. If people are doing those types of things, it doesn't really matter about the company. If they're that excited that they're going out to a bar and instead of watching a sporting event, they're watching on CNBC what the earnings are going to be, right? That is a big psychological like thing. So I was making a joke on, yay, there are any parties this time around because you didn't hear that this time around. People learn their lesson. And it's the same thing with like what goes on, like the Economist magazine, or it used to be like there used to be, I don't even know if there's still a money magazine these days, right? And whatever they would put on that magazine usually meant that like the move is like close to being over, right? That's the writing is on the wall, right? And that's what the market is about. It's a group of expectations. And if everybody's bullish, right, then what happens is um there's more risk than there is reward, right? If everybody's bearish, right, and then it's a lower bar to kind of go over. So again, I'm just covering a little bit of the psychological stuff because it gets lost, I think, a lot of times. And and then there's momentum, right? And so that's what we've got going on. And there's several catalysts that have been going on in Bitcoin, and that's why Bitcoin keeps going higher, right? Number one, you've got a change in political office. And this is a group that's embracing the crypto movement, and they're also putting a lot of people. There's appointments that are happening in the cabinet and so forth for the upcoming administration, and most of these folks that Trump is putting in the cabinet are pro Bitcoin. So every time they announce one of these people, new cabinet appointments, right? Oh, you hear this person is like, they really like cryptos. So it's giving a tailwind. Like what else is giving a tailwind to Bitcoin right now? Well, IBIT just, came out with options, right? That's another player that kind of is entering the space, even though you could trade, you know, you could trade futures and you could do a whole bunch of different things. But again, just like the ETFs getting launched too, right? It's easier access. So that's what's going on. And you'll find, and this is a good example, this MSTR. We'll talk about momentum right now. Do I think that this thing is overdone? I do, but you kind of have to wait till it plays out. Have we seen this story happen again and again over the last 5 years? We have. I mentioned in the beginning of this video, pot stocks, right? Here's a good example, right? Something like this goes up. This is just one of the ETFs, or I guess you could look at the MJ ETF, right? This thing goes all the way up to, I don't know what, or what's the one stock? Tillery, right? So I didn't. It's kind of, these are good examples. Tillery goes up to 150. Now I think this name has had stock splits, right? Where is the stock trading now? right? The stock's trading at $3 or so, two or $3, right? So again, I'm not saying that MSTR does that, but if you're not familiar with how this works for these patterns, don't fall in love with some of these moves, right? And I see everybody giving each other high fives right now. That's great. If you made money in this stock, congratulations. But I'm going to tell you right now, this stock will eventually come back down, right? It happens over and over. If you don't believe me, SMCI is another one. And people are still so hooked on SMCI because so like this is the evolution of what you see with retail traders. Sorry, I'm a retail trader too, right? At this point. I used to be an institutional trader. I'm a retail trader now. But what happens is with this stock is these stocks will go up like this, right? And parabolic move to the upside, and then they usually come right back down. Now, what happens all along this way down is you have trapped investors and you have people who are still playing the bounce until they're too tired and they can't afford to play the bounce anymore, right? And they usually exit the arena. So, why it, and I've had numerous people who are not usually in investing have asked me about SMCI over the past couple of weeks. Like, guys, it's in a downtrend. They have accounting issues, right? So yes, it had this humongous day yesterday, but do you really think has that anything has changed here in with SMCI? No, they've got issues. Like so, and this plays itself out. So it's, you know, so people think that, oh, it was once trading at $110, right? Oh, it's a good buy in here. That's the wrong way to look at it. You have to think about what is going to happen going forward. Forget where it was trading, right? And think about what's going to happen going forward. Why do you think that they have all these accounting issues? You think that this is just nonsense, that all these accounting issues came out of nowhere, right? I'm not saying this is Enron, but Enron had a whole bunch of accounting issues too, and people played that all the way to the downside too until they went out of business. So I'm sorry to have like a uh kind of dreary type of type of video tonight, but I just want to make sure people. So why do I talk about this stuff? Number one, I've been doing this for a long time and I've seen it happen over and over and over. So you take your profits. And again, like I know Jim Cramer gets beaten up these days and there's contrarian plays on what Cramer says, but you take information that you can kind of learn from people. One of the things that always resonates with me when I hear Jim Cramer is bulls make money, bears can make money, pigs get slaughtered. So if you've made some great money in these types of moves, that's awesome. Congratulations to you. Just understand how the story ends weeks, months later. Okay. And we'll see where this thing is trading, so on and so forth, because I believe that this thing is way over it's trading multiples of what it owns. But this is also about momentum. Momentum will go up farther than it should, right? People are piling on. There's gamma moves with options, and so on and so forth. Let's get back to the market. That's my rant of the day. So I started talking about how the VIX is heightened, and there's this sense of worried about World War III. Again, I hope that things don't get escalated, but what the market is doing right now is kind of levels, and it's finding some support. We're in a very strong seasonal month. That is normally how it kind of works. You don't see a lot of breakdowns in November. It's just a stronger market out there. So we keep testing this top of the value area. Notice how we've done this now. I think this was going back to Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We're trying to hold the range here, and that's the value area for the month of November. Not a shock that we're finding some support. Now, again, it's not to say that this support can't be broken, but right now the buyers are in supporting it, right, and supporting price. The Qs. It's the same story going on with the Qs, right? A little bit different levels, but same kind of thing. We're kind of holding in here. There's this gap here. Maybe this gap will get filled in the next couple days. For now, we're holding on here, right? Every time you could see this on the 1 hour chart, we're kind of coming in, we're finding some support. IWM, which to me is the one that is different than the others. That's the way that IWM has been trading all year long. Notice that this has found support not down at the top of the value area, but the 20-day moving average, right? And holding. I talked a lot yesterday about the IBD 50 ETF. did pretty well today. If you look at the names that are moving again, right now the market is in love with these names, right? High momentum, high growth names. I like those too, right? Because they're fun to trade, right? They can really move. But eventually, hopefully we'll probably see and here and Lemonade on the top of the list again today. TTD, which I got long today. NTR. So what do you notice about a lot of these names? These are strong earnings names. ALAB, right? FTNT, right? Another name that dips after and had this was a name that had good earnings, dipped, and the dip gets bought. Netflix up another 1.4% today. Right. So again, look at look at the names that are going up versus going down. And they are names that have had most of them, not all of them. Again, nothing's 100%, but the majority of the names had good earnings. Right. Now there's some other names too. There's other issues. Look at Powell was down 16% today, bad earnings. Right. Dave is one that had strong earnings. It's one that I'm watching because it's dipped a bit. All right. So I would just be mindful of this because if you look at what's going on with breath, right, we're continuing to move higher or, and find support and so forth. But it's mainly it's mainly the names that are having strong earnings, and there are other names in different groups. They're just not acting very well. And hence you see more new lows again versus new highs, right? And take a look at this, and so this is 4-week S&P new highs versus new lows. Take a look at what you see here, right? The blue down here is more. There's been more new lows now for about the last week and a half, right? Now this is not the same, I think, in new 52-week highs. This still is intact, right? We look at this, right? Even though the lows have picked up a little bit, right? So I think what we're going to want to see, because you know, as much as I like to traffic in these names, an ALAB. And so I'm in this ALAB, right? I mentioned I bought TTD today. Again, I'm looking for things, right? Here's your move back above the value area, strong earnings name, back and forth. But ultimately, I think it's going to have to change a little bit, right? I think it's going to have to be, maybe the industrials start to get going again, right? The industrials are kind of just sitting here, right? Maybe, it's the financials haven't done much, even though they've been consolidating, right? They've just been kind of consolidating a little bit, maybe waiting for this 20-day moving average to catch up. So what's my point here? My point is don't get complacent, right? Don't get complacent in the same names. All right, so Tesla had an inside day today. It's still having a little bit of issues with this 346 level that I've been talking about. Again, notice how well the valuers are telling you where there's resistance. Right? Let's see if we can break through and get above and get to this like 360 365 VPOC up here. That's what I would be looking for Tesla if we continue to see momentum in these types of names. But I started to look at a little bit of energy names, right? I talked about this on Twitter the other day. Look at what the energy names were actually one of the leaders for today. It's okay to be in an energy stock, guys, right? I'm in this VNOM. Right? I know they're a bit more boring. They don't move as fast as a Rocket Labs or an Astera Labs or a Reddit. But I think overall, here's what Reddit is up to right now. And a couple new names I'm watching. Datadog, I think, looks very interesting here. It's up after Snowflake had earnings. So, I think take a look at the weekly chart of Datadog. This looks pretty darn good, right? You are starting to see a lot of these names who went sideways for a while. Take a look, right? This is not an outperformer this year, right? This name is essentially like flat. So maybe this can begin to break higher, right? So that's something that I would be watching. So, guys, I'm going to leave it here for now. Again, I went a little bit off tangent, but I also wanted to give you a sense of like what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to make predictions, right? I leave that to the folks on Twitter. I'm looking to basically take what the market is giving. The market's giving you signals every day. I'm just trying to follow those signals, right? And be on the right side of the market and make money. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.